It's unfair on the clubs and we just keep tolerating it. That's a quote from Wayne Bennett, describing the impact of the State of Origin series on the NRL Premiership season. So why is he saying this? In round 12 this year, the round before Origin Game 1, there were 246 players unavailable for selection due to injuries, byes, suspensions, and State of Origin. That's just over $123 million worth of talent. However, only 36 of those players were Origin players. So, does the State of Origin series actually have an impact on your chance at an NRL Premiership? And would it be better to just shut the season down for 3 weeks and let the State of Origin series play out? Let's break it down. First, let's see what we're working with. I'm going to bring in our zero tackle analyst, Darren Parkin, to explain some of the more nitty-gritty details.
So State of Origin is currently a 3-game series played over a 6-week period. It's been that way since 1982, when eligibility moved from the state you were currently playing in based on the team to the state that you were actually born in. Been on Wednesday nights with the purpose of allowing players who are in camp for Origin to back up into their club games the following weekend. In 2009, there was a league-wide vote that kept it in that position, which has generally proved to be fairly popular in terms of Origin, but obviously there are some who feel that backup does create some undue issues.
So the first problem you may notice with this model is the short turnarounds.
No disrespect to Manly and the Warriors, but we felt like the Origin period cruelled us in 2011. That we dropped from 1st to 4th, I think, or 5th. And then we were just knackered coming out of it as well. So I agree with Wayne. I think you could have under-19s, Residents' Cup, Origin fixtures. You could make them best out of 3. You could have the women's Origin games on as well. There's enough football there that you can fill the broadcasters to have 3 weeks back to back to back. And for everyone else saying that, you want the best football players playing at the end of the year. And to do that, you're going to have to give them some rest. You can't be asking guys every year to play 30 games with rep football. So I think they could pause for 3 weeks, have a big fanfare around it and get everyone involved. And you'll probably find it's a lot more exciting 3 weeks in a row.
So it's obvious that the league is pretty taxing on the body, but maybe it's not even the short turnarounds that's the issue. Maybe it's the fact that you're playing more games, so therefore you have more chance at sustaining an injury. I think we all remember in 2024 when Reece Walsh got smashed in the first 10 minutes of the first game.
This may be close. And the Broncos were 8-4 prior to the start of the Origin period last year before their season fell away rapidly. They ended up finishing 12th, and again, it's one factor. There were a lot of things that went wrong for Brisbane last year. There were a lot of issues that obviously led to them moving on a coach and various other things. How much was that injury a factor? And then do you balance that by saying that players can get injured in club games, they can get injured at training? We've seen a recent example this year with the Warriors and Barnett going down with injury. That was then compounded by other injuries in club games, which has significantly hurt the Warriors' season.
So the other part of this is the structure of the buys while Origin is on. That throws up another potential disadvantage, which I'll let Darren explain.
So the NRL draw is made before the season starts and before Origin selection is locked in. So they've got some idea who's going to get picked in terms of the key components of a side. They have a fairly strong view that Penrith and the Melbourne Storm and the Broncos will be very well represented. But you've got to make those fixtures before you know for sure. And if you look at those sides, Penrith, Brisbane and Melbourne, they've had 2 buys or scheduled for 2 buys during the Origin block. But a team like the Bulldogs, who have exploded from a finals team into a premiership contender and have therefore had Origin debutants, they have no buys during this period, meaning they have to play every week during that run, sometimes with players unavailable. And we have seen some of their results, albeit their form hasn't dropped dramatically, but some of their results fall a little bit. You look at the Roosters, who have had heavy Origin presence with no buys, West Tigers, those sorts of teams that are trying to improve. It's probably one measuring the impact of sides that are trying to grow, that have a couple of unexpected Origin players versus those sides that we know will be well represented, but it's definitely one of the bigger factors.
So taking into account the short turnarounds, the injuries, and the structure of the buys, does that actually matter in the end? Does it halt your chances at a premiership?
statistics over recent times suggests that the best sides in the competition remain the best sides in the competition. The Penrith Panthers have been the highest represented Origin side in terms of player numbers over the last few years and have won every premiership between 2021 and 2024. They're averaging 6.5 to 7 players called into the Origin realm, so that's a little more than half their actual starting squad on the ground that has been called up, and their record pre-Origin over that run is 81.5%, and it's 81.4% afterwards, including a completely unbeaten run through every final series that they've played. So it hasn't had the influence on them. The Melbourne Storm's record has remained fairly consistent, only about a 1.5% post-Origin drop away, and they've been a top 4 side for as long as we can remember. And if you go back to their absolute halcyon days when they were led by Smith, Slater, Cronk and a number of others, they stayed strong in terms of contending for titles despite those players driving the bus at Origin level. The Sharks are a side that at times they've been patchy, but their performance during the Origin run has been quite strong, and then post-Origin it's only been a marginal drop away, and the Broncos are probably in a similar boat. The counterpoint put forward by Wayne Bennett is that it's not so much the powerhouses who kind of factor in at the start of the year that they're going to lose players. It's those sides that emerge, like the Bulldogs, like this year the Raiders, that maybe have some unexpected selections that they might have to navigate through a slightly more difficult period, but it's the million-dollar question as to how much that impacts them.
So while those numbers are pretty interesting, there are some examples of alternative scheduling that we can look at. In the year 2020, State of Origin was played over a 3-week period at the end of the season, and Wayne Bennett actually coached Queensland through that time.
One of the comments Bennett made that I found probably most fascinating was the best Origin period he's ever coached, and he's coached some Origin periods for Queensland, was the one in 2020 where all 3 games were played at the end of the season after the coronavirus pandemic, and it sort of shut the season down. The NRL had to get very creative about how to keep Origin as a product. And so they played it on 3 Wednesday nights at the end of the season, back to back to back, and the players are in camp and they didn't leave camp and go back to clubland. Apparently the players loved it, the coaches loved it, and it had no impact on the regular season. So Bennett's comments I found quite interesting, and I do think it's time for a change. There is no other sporting competition anywhere in the world that goes, oh, we're going to have a 6-week break now, or period now, where every second week you're going to be playing with either players backing up off a 48-hour rest, or you're going to be backing up by playing without those players who are away in Origin camp. So I think one way or another, we've got a new TV deal starting in, I think, 2028 or 2027, whatever it is. It's being negotiated at the moment. And if one of the things they aren't negotiating is the Origin period needs to be separated from the NRL season, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
But if you talk more broadly with former players, Andrew Johns, one of the legends, spoke about how he prided himself on going back and repaying his club. There was often a message where it's like, that they've supported you in your quest to get up to Origin. Now you go back and help them. It keeps you match fit and rock hard in terms of finals, given the intensity that you're playing at through that time. And obviously the 2 to 3 day break straight into games allows some players to build momentum. Now that's not going to be a consensus for everyone, but generally players who are playing Origin are in favour of keeping the format as it is. Where you get objection is probably coaches who are worried about the impact on their overall team performance.
So what about other sporting codes? Is this a problem that's specific to the NRL? There's heaps of other sports where players are lost to representative games, and the story is a little bit different, but the problems are the same. The FIFA International match calendar doesn't overlap with club schedules in the same way that State of Origin does. However, many coaches have often criticised how international games will squeeze the calendar, causing player fatigue, injuries, and interrupt the rhythm of the season. In 2023, Pep Guardiola, the manager of Manchester City, said, "We give them 2 weeks holiday and they go to the national team and they train every day. When they come back, they are exhausted." However, I guess you could argue that whether you're an NRL coach or a Premier League coach, accounting for the fixture and your players that are going to be playing representative games is all part of the art of coaching. Managing a list at the absolute top level isn't supposed to be easy, and good teams are supposed to adapt. So what about the fans? What do you guys want? You're the fabric of the sport after all.
I am making a 3-week Origin period, right? Straight away, taking the fucking very great, have Origin in that period, and then having the season's very start again. So I do like halfway through the season and then go again.
We took a poll on our Instagram page, and surprisingly, about 60% of you said you were in favour of pausing the season to get the State of Origin series done. And what does everybody else do while the season's paused? After all, there's only 36 players that play State of Origin. Is it an opportunity to have more representative games?
I totally agree with the concept of Wayne Bennett saying it ruins clubs' premiership chances. It turns into a reserve grade comp for 2 months, basically. Oh, strangely, in this context, there's quite a lot of NRL players backed up this weekend. But then they're going to go back to the RLPA and complain about their workloads later in the year, right? So we can't have it both ways. I would like to see a 4-week gap with Origin in there. We can also add the international games as well that don't involve Australia. So there's plenty of teams now. Tonga, Samoa, England, New Zealand can all play against each other. What's happened to Rugby League Nines? Where has that disappeared to? We can have a Nines competition. We could have a knockout competition. I think it's time to think laterally, because these players are being put through a threshing machine every single week as it is, and then we make it twice as bad during the Origin period. The intensity of the game is huge, and the players are absolutely busted after it. So something has got to happen, and I'm glad Wayne Bennett has spoken up.
So where does all this leave us? It's really hard to pin down the exact effect that State of Origin has on your regular season. But is Wayne Bennett right? Is it unfair on the clubs? As always, it's pretty complicated and we don't have all the answers. But we do want to hear what you guys think. So head down into the comments section and let us know. Should they pause the season or should we just keep it as it is?